Morning Revolution. And welcome to Good Morning Revolution, Rosanna and Michael.
Good morning, Revolution.
Anita,
Morning, Revolution.
good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody? You doing good? You feel good?
Good.
Great. Happy Pride
Above
Month.
ground.
Happy Pride Month.
Month.
All good on
Happy-
this side of the rainbow.
We should be criticized. This is the 18th of June. We haven't said Happy Pride Month. You know, we've been weak on that question over the years. So we should be extra sensitive to it. Michael, are we ready for the march on the 27th?
We're getting ready. Yeah, we're gonna have comrades there from around, the area, New York, metropolitan area, Philadelphia, and so forth. That's on the 27th, the Queer Liberation March. And so we're excited for that. Lots of good articles also in the People's World about Pride Month and the LGBTQ liberation movement. So yeah, I'm excited.
Are there two marches that day? Is it like the parade and then the Queer Liberation March? Or
there's a lot
am I
of things
confused?
going on. There's and each borough has their own little Pride celebration. For example, this weekend there's like a Bronx Pride. It's not really a march. It's more of like a rally kind of, like
Okay.
cookout and food and people dancing and everything. And but the big one is going to be on the 27th because as I understand it, the mainstream, liberal Pride has kind of been canceled. But the good thing about the one on the 27th in New York City is that police have been excluded from it. Usually they've had like a police contingent, but that has been their invitation has been rescinded this year.
In other words, it got completely defunded. Rosanna, LA Pride, marching, celebrating?
We just opened up, so I haven't heard of it. And I think people were hesitant to organize anything because we weren't sure if we were going to open up yet or not. And so large crowds are still sort of iffy. So I don't think there'll be anything huge like we have, in the past, but there will be something.
Come to New York. We got plenty of room. We're ready to celebrate. What about Ohio, Anita?
That's pretty much the same situation in Ohio. They did cancel the big one that is usually, the main Pride Parade, but different municipalities around Ohio have their own events. What we have in Ohio that's almost like a second Pride is the Doodah Parade on July 1st. And that's just a wild parade of craziness. And that's really a lot of fun and a lot of LGBTQ participation in that.
That's the one with the garbage trucks, right? Where they decorate the garbage trucks. I'm from
Yes, there's all kinds of things, including a Fidel Castro lookalike march, band of Fidel impersonators. So
interesting. Well, time for the Communist Party to get crazy. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Prince said, "Let's go crazy." Back in the day. Party like it's 1990. It's 2021. We got to do a step better. Well, it's been one hell of a week, and we hope everybody participates in these demonstrations and fights for equality for all people, regardless of their gender or sexual orientation. This week, yesterday, the Supreme Court said no to the challenge to the Affordable Care Act, upheld Obamacare, and it was a vote of 7-2, Rosanna, 7-2. And only two of the right-wing judges said no, and the others supported. And they said that the reason was that there were no grounds, that the states who had initiated the suit had not demonstrated any harm to them. And so they were like, why are you coming here messing with us, taking up our time when you have no legal ground? They just dismissed that bad boy. And but it was a victory for the Affordable Care Act.
I think it tells us, I think it tells us that, when we were first talking about the Affordable Care Act and people were criticizing it, that it didn't go far enough. And one of our positions was, this is the first step, and once you take this step, there's no going back, in the sense that it won't be eliminated completely. And I think this begins to show us that there's, I was a little surprised. I thought they would try to slice it in some form or another. But, I think it just goes to show you that when people win a victory such as this, you just can't take, their medical care away. It's not that easy. It won't be that easy anymore. So once people experience these what we should have always been, which should have always had, that, once they experience it, they're just not willing to give it up, no matter whether you're a Republican, evangelical, or whatever. Healthcare is healthcare, and other benefits like a livable wage is also, a benefit that many people haven't really fully experienced. It's not really a benefit; it's a right. Sorry.
Say what?
I said it's not really a benefit; it's a right.
Mhm.
That's right. And that's one of the big things, that it established the right of the people to health care.
Right.
Health care is a human right, and you can't, it's like Social Security. You can't mess with it. So what did they say? It's the fourth rail of politics, Anita, Social Security. A third rail, is it the third rail or the fourth rail? I get
I think it's
confused.
the third rail. Yeah.
Third
the one-
rail. They
yeah,
come from railroad
sure.
tracks, right?
Right.
You
Well,
touch that
Ronald
bad
Reagan,
boy-
I want to quote Ronald Reagan. He said that socialized medicine was like the slippery slope into socialism. And I think, I think
Yeah.
that goes to what Rosanna was saying. People, once they have some benefits, they realize how wonderful it would be if my human needs were taken care of by my collectivity. So, so I'm really glad that the Supreme Court decided they'd keep their hands off this one.
Well, the national board of our party had a big discussion about healthcare the other night, and the thesis was put forward that Medicare for all is the next step. Is that right, Anita? Is that the next step?
I think something like Medicare for all is definitely the next step. I mean, yes, maybe the Affordable Care Act did establish that we have a right to health care, but it didn't make it affordable for everyone. It's still a burden for people, and especially when it comes to the drugs and how much they're paying for prescription drugs. So I think we really need health care for everyone, and I think the best way to do it is pool our money and give everybody that benefit.
Who is the enemy in that fight? Is it the pharmaceutical companies? Is it the big hospital corporations? Is it the Veterans Administration? Who is? What's the obstacle to us getting universal health care? Anybody?
I think all those people are, but go ahead, Rosanna.
I think profit is the drive for profit. That's the obstacle. That's the biggest
The
obstacle.
pharmaceutical companies, dominated by the billionaires and, but also the politicians that enable them and that protect them. You also have to,
Right.
There's the fight in Congress, but then there's the war. I was told years ago by my father, who's in the medical field, that the pharmaceutical companies look for customers and not cures. And so I think we can see that, especially now after this year that we've had.
Mhm.
But that was certainly true with regard to the opioid, epidemic. Have mercy. I saw
Now they have a cure.
somebody went to the hospital with a heart attack. I saw this morning, came out with $125,000 hospital bill.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, how are you gonna pay something like that unless you're, rich? This was a working class person, and it's just ridiculous. Well, after the epidemic of COVID, and how many 600,000 people died, and the hospitals were pushed to the brink, and the healthcare workers pushed to the brink, and society pushed to the brink, and this was a good time to raise that issue. strike when the iron's hot. You know, we gotta, and we're going to be publishing an article at cpusa.org, that report. So we invite everybody to check it out. And by the way, while I'm thinking about it, we have an immigrant rights panel on Sunday at what is it, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, I think.
Be there or be square. We'll announce it again at the end of the program. Another big thing happened this week on voting rights. On voting rights, Mr. Manchin said that he was in favor of putting forward a proposal that on voter ID, that if you come with your gas bill or your electric bill or your phone bill, you can vote. This is an effort to woo the right-wing Republicans who said they don't want none of that. They want, you know, some kind of super duper, like driver's license, photo ID, among other things, along with your arm and your leg and part
Down
of
the
your
dollar
ear.
deposit, yeah.
Yeah.
DNA profile.
DNA, yeah, in order to vote, making it so difficult, you know. You would think voting should be free and easy. And then Stacey Abrams says she supported it. And then Mitch McConnell said, "Oh, hell no, you don't. We're not doing that at all." And so, Michael, it seems that we might be a step closer to a vote in the Senate on voting rights. That Manchin is. Are you still mad at him?
I try to judge people based on their, you know, everyday behavior, not just one thing that they did in the past. But, you know, it's going to take unity to get this passed for the For the People Act or even the John Lewis Voting Rights bill. But of course, the For the People Act is more inclusive. It's more, I guess, radical, you could say. And so anyone who wants to be a part of that, you know, we should welcome that, you know, including Manchin, especially Stacey Abrams, who we could really give credit to, at least in the case of Georgia, for the electoral defeat of Trump and the GOP. And so I think this is definitely something to support because it's under attack everywhere, you know, especially these are Jim Crow laws being implemented to prevent people from voting. And I think that's very hard to understand, at least for the younger generations who didn't live through that and who kind of say, oh, voting, you know, whatever. But it's very serious. And like you said, you maybe not feel it until you go to the voting polls and they say, hey, you don't have this, that, or the other thing, you know, and having your electric bill or something like that. For example, I don't have a New York State ID. I just moved to New York about a year ago. And so when my Ohio driver's license expires, you know, what am I going to remember? To bring in my passport to vote, you know? And so something like that would even help someone like me. So I think that's what we have to remember.
Don't be like me, because I always forget when my passport expires, my driver's license expires. I ain't paying no attention to my birthday. Rosanna, you still mad at Manchin?
Well, I think there's a big problem with presenting your, you know, utility bill, because that eliminates a whole bunch of other people. You know, that utility bill is not under the name of everybody that lives there. It's only under the name of one person. So if, you know, if that utility bill was just under my name, then my husband couldn't vote. And then we have multi-family, you know, where several families live together. That means only one out of, I don't know, 6, 7 people that live there, or 2 or 3 more that are eligible to vote will not be able to vote. So
you still mad at that guy? I don't blame you.
Still
and I was gonna say, oftentimes the gas or light bill is often under the name of the owner of the apartment or the house, and that's sometimes the renter. It's not the renter's name. So that's an important point Rosanna's making.
Yeah.
Right.
But
What
about you?
I want to stick up for Stacey Abrams a little bit here, because I think it's strategic. Manchin needs to have a little compromise so that he can. And if it doesn't succeed, if he can't get 2 or 3 Republicans to sign on to this, then I think he'll give up and maybe let the filibuster go on this one. But Stacey Abrams argues that this compromise really gets at the things that are really important, like ending gerrymandering, which is a 10-year solution. I mean, if we mess up, but we can't get the, if states get gerrymandered after this census, then it's going to be that way until, the next census. And then the other thing, there was something else that she had that was, I think that voter ID, yes, that's really onerous, but it's still a way you can get out the vote. You can help people get out the vote. If they're going to be gerrymandered, there's no hope at all. So I think she accepted certain things and, rejected others. And I just hope we can get rid of the gerrymandering, or we're, it's just not good for working class interests in the future.
Well, one of those things, one of those provisions in that bill will call for pre-clearance by the Justice Department, by the Civil Rights Division,
right? Yes,
which was gutted, and that
Mhm.
should end a whole lot of those shenanigans.
That's right.
If you want to make any changes in the voting law, you got to get cleared, particularly in
Right.
states that have a history of discrimination against African Americans, Latinos, youth, and so on and so forth, but particularly people of color. And that's why one of the reasons that they're so afraid of it. But Al Sharpton said that Stacey Abrams was playing three-dimensional chess when she made that proposal, because she knew that no matter what compromise was put on the table, that the Republicans were going to say no. And sure enough, Mitch McConnell took the bait and said, oh, hell no, we're not supporting. And he gave some kind of phony reason. And so it exposes the Republican obstruction and opposition and puts additional pressure on those so-called centrists. Well, they are centrists, they're not so-called, in the Democratic Party to either, vote for that bill, either by reconciliation. I don't know how you do it, if it's reconciliation or something else, or it's the filibuster or whatever, but it puts additional pressure on them. And so it was kind of a tactical move on their part. The Republicans are hell bent on making this administration a one term. They're just an insurrectionist party of no. And by the way, there's an interesting article in the Washington Post yesterday detailing all of the pressure that Trump and his chief of staff and others tried to put on the Justice Department to overthrow the election. It's really an interesting read. Very, very dramatic. I encourage everybody. There's insane. This is totally insane. I think the acting attorney general said something like that in response. And the CIA officer is involved, and they had some crazy theory about them using a satellite from Italy to change the voting in one county in Michigan and all that. I mean, it's just, lunacy, politics and policy, but it's believed by the majority of the Republican Party. And anyway, we're still living in crazy town, USA, on the right. Next thing in the news, Biden and Putin had a summit yesterday. Did anybody watch it?
No.
Televised?
News? Read about it?
I read about it, but I watched like the snippets that they passed on the news afterwards.
I have a question. Is Putin the enemy, Michael?
No, the enemy of the American working class? No, I don't think he's the enemy of the.
Pause for a minute. Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Pause again.
I don't think he's the best for the Russian working class. I think, the Russian Communist Party would tell you that as well. But I think, we don't need a Cold War, which Biden made that point. He said the last thing I want right now is another Cold War, which is important. But he doesn't seem to be following that rhetoric in regards to China and in regards to NATO. And so there, you know, it's kind of a balancing act. And I think he used some very aggressive language towards Putin in the meeting. I forget the word that he used, but he said there would be some sort of consequences, you know, if Putin stepped out of line or whatever. And so I think that's also not good for world peace. I think we have to remember that Putin years ago, I forget how many years ago, tried to get Russia to join NATO, right? Which, you know, we don't like NATO, it's a military alliance. And they said no. So, and the whole reason NATO was created, you know, half a century ago or whatever, was to counter the Warsaw Act, you know, the Eastern Bloc, the socialist country. So why is it still around? You know, what's their justification for it still existing? Because Russia's not a socialist country. And so you know, the fact that it still exists and the fact that Biden's using this aggressive language towards not only China, but also Putin, I don't think it's good for world peace. No.
Is Putin the enemy, Anita?
No, I don't think he's the enemy of as Michael said, the American working class, definitely not. And yeah, now I've lost my train of thought for a minute, but yeah, no, he's not the enemy.
But why do they hate him so? And what do you think, Rosanna? Is Putin the enemy?
I don't think so either, but I mean, they have to find some kind of an enemy to attack and, you know, flex their muscles. If, you know, if the American people aren't fearing something, if they don't have the American people fearing something, then the American people will turn on who has really been oppressing them. And so that would be, you know, the capitalists, that would be all of them. So I think, you know, they've got to find some kind of enemy. They can't, and they haven't been successful. So they're looking.
And that's why they're mentioning China so much. It's mission creep. You know, Russia clearly isn't a threat to our interests or the U.S. interests, U.S. government's interests, so that they're shifting to China. And I was amazed to read that China was first mentioned in a NATO document only in 2019. So it's a brand new, you know, thing for them to look at, and it doesn't make any sense. As Michael said, it was, you know, it really was not formed for that purpose, and really
and it's always a one issue fight, you know. Oh, we don't like the Russians because that's the reason why we got Trump, but then Trump was implementing sanctions on Russia, and then, oh, we don't like the Chinese because of the coronavirus. And so it really doesn't, you know, if we're going to blame the Russians for our voting, you know, the electoral issues, we need to really, you know, look internally and say, okay, is this electoral college truly democratic? And are these Jim Crow laws being, you know, preventing people from voting? Is that truly, we should look inwards before blaming people on the outside.
Russia is a capitalist country ruled by a capitalist party that has an amass of nuclear weapons that is comparable to the United States, and they can't push them around, you know. And there's a hangover of anti-Russian and anti-Soviet, even though Putin's no left winger. He's kind of a centrist for us, in my opinion, and in the opinion of our comrades in Europe. Though the perception of him is that he's a right winger, but they don't agree with that position. And but that legacy, that residue of anti-Russian, it just oozes. You know, I have trouble watching it, and it's true that Putin, they're pursuing the state interest of Russia in conflict with Europe and the United, and they play one against another. And it's true that they have supported some of these right wing, including Trump, you know, against NATO because they're trying to dismantle it, and against the EU, and that's a very dangerous game that they're playing. But I think that if we're not careful, all of us are going to pay for it. And you're right about China. And is there really a difference between the Trump policy and the Biden policy on China. You know, that's something that we need to talk about at a upcoming show. Well, I think about we're just about done. Sunday, what time is that town hall meeting on immigration?
6
Did
p.m.
anybody look it up, huh?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. And we got some state senators from California and some immigration activists and some trade unionists. So we invite everybody to come, check it out, pose your questions, you know, learn a little bit. This is it's a wedge issue that is really important for us to understand and begin to solve so that those children aren't locked up around the border, and the right wing and the workers in this country who don't have documents, get union rights, get jobs, and are able to, so that the dreamers can get their citizenship. There's a comprehensive immigration reform. All of this is in the vital national interest of the United States and the international interest of the planet, as far as that goes. All right, same time, same station next week. Good morning, Revolution. Have a great day. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.